All right, thanks for tuning in to another edition of Our Lads Guide to the 2020 NFL Draft. That's right, draft coverage on the OFN meeting room. And make sure to order America's #1 draft guide for 39 years and counting, the Our Lads Draft Guide, by logging on to ourlads.com. So today we're joined by Adam Patrick, writer for thevikingage.com at Fansided, to talk about the Minnesota Vikings. Adam, good talking to you again.
Yeah, thanks for having me back.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love the Vikings wall paint. That's a nice, we got a nice little, is that like a towel that you even take to the beach whenever you have to? Or
it's my little backdrop.
Awesome.
I have for my own podcast.
You're out in California, right?
Yep. I'm in San Diego.
How is it out there? How's everybody feeling?
I think we're doing pretty good. Everyone's doing pretty well at social distancing and only going places when they need to. The beaches are closed, parks are closed. You know, it's weird. It's a weird time to be living in this world.
Oh yeah.
So we're doing what we can, and it's been raining a lot, so there hasn't really been reason to really go anywhere either. So.
Well, and the NFL draft is like the main, the sports. It's obviously nothing athletic going on out there, but there's nothing else going on in sports. So the NFL draft for football fans is, I got to believe, it's taking up all of our time, whether you work in the industry or you're just a fan. I mean, what else can you be doing right now but following what your team's going to do for the NFL draft?
Yeah, that's for sure. We've definitely seen, a large increase in our readers just because, nothing else is going on. There's updates, from the NBA and Major League Baseball of, them trying to get their season back on track. Maybe, a daily rumor of when it might happen, when it might not happen. But yeah, for the NFL, it's really the only thing going on right now, and the draft is still going on, as much as some GMs would not, rather it not be that way. But
yeah, boo-hoo to them, right?
Well, I think it was good, a good example of, when the pandemic started getting in full swing, and then free agency started, and it gave people an opportunity to just kind of
yes,
leave that bad news in the background for a little bit, and focus on and put their focus on something that they enjoy and can take their mind off things. So I think the draft will be something similar. It'll be interesting to see how ESPN and the NFL Network do it, because it's going to be all virtual.
Yep.
So it'll be
3 days worth too.
Yeah, interesting to watch, and the Vikings have 12 picks.
That's
so
right.
Super busy.
That's right. And that's where we're going to lead off with. Of course, the number went up to 12 after the Stephon Diggs trade. So let's begin with that. The Vikings get a first, a fifth, and a sixth in this year's draft, a fourth next year. And they give up a seventh and Diggs to Buffalo. So how did the fans react to that trade?
Oh, there's some diehard, Stephon Diggs fans, I think, and just in general, everyone was a big fan of him when he was here. But during last season and the beginning of this offseason, it's the writing started, I think, to be on the wall of him just not wanting to be with the Vikings anymore. Whether it's because he just wasn't happy where he was, or wasn't happy in the direction the offense was heading, or whatever. He wasn't happy with Zimmer, or just wanted to get out of there. It seemed kind of inevitable, and as much as people didn't want to think of it as a possibility, it was a possibility, and it happened. And I think the Vikings made out very well in the trade for someone to get a first round pick for a player who's never even made the Pro Bowl. He's never made an All-Pro team. He's had 2 1,000-yard seasons, but they got a great return for him. And they had to do something like this because their offense is built around Dalvin Cook, and to have an offense like that and pay two receivers, top dollar. It just wasn't smart financially to do that, and Adam Thielen is the golden boy in Minnesota, and them getting rid of him over Stephon Diggs probably wasn't going to happen, and they were able to get more for someone like
Yeah.
Stephon Diggs, and they did. So,
and of course, this is a good draft with the amount of quality receivers to replenish the unit. And because you take a look at just take a look at the team itself and what you have. Because you did sign Tajay Sharp, who he's got talent, and he actually played pretty well last year. I think he had his best numbers last year. So it's an upgrade in the quarterback position. So Sharp is somebody to keep an eye on. And then you got Olabisi Johnson, who had 31 receptions last year. Statistically, looks to me more of a possession type, but you can comment obviously on that. And then also Dylan Mitchell was an interesting pickup, an undrafted receiver who had a 1,000-yard season in Oregon on the practice squad last year. So start with some of the players, the new players or the young players that fans may not be aware of who could impact the team this year.
Well, I think you hit on a couple guys, but I think there's a guy named Alexander Hollins to keep an eye on. He was a rookie last year. And he got a little bit of playing time. I believe he was active for the Saints playoff game, whether it was due to injuries or whatnot. But he's a guy to keep on. They really liked him. He was on the practice squad for a little bit last year. And then I think you could look outside of the receiver position to see some other exciting options in the Vikings offense. They have Dalvin Cook. He caught over 50 passes last year, so he can be an option in the receiving game as well. And then you have the second year of Irv Smith Jr., tight end. So, and he looked good as a rookie last year. He showed some progression later in the year, and I think he's going to have a nice sophomore campaign in his second year for the Vikings next year. And then, they'll probably add one or two receivers in the draft. They need probably someone who can stretch the field. Maybe a guy with a little more speed than BC Johnson, because he's not the fastest guy in the world. But yeah, like you said, he's a good possession guy. He's a good number 3, and Tajay Sharp, he can compete for that role too. I'm not putting Tajay Sharp in a cementing him in a role right now for the Vikings, because they were in this position last year with a guy named Jordan Taylor, and everyone was getting excited about him, and he didn't even make it to like the third preseason game. So
all right.
The Vikings only signed Tajay Sharp. I believe it was like a $1 million deal for 1 year.
Prove it deal, sure.
Yeah, so he's got to prove he can pick up the offense fairly quickly, especially during this offseason where they're not going to have really any OTAs or anything to get up on the offense. So that's going to be on him to pick that up on his own pretty much, and then come in the training camp whenever that happens and prove that he's able to do the things that they want him to do.
So we're looking at a receiver who can stretch the field, and maybe even somebody who can add some depth to the return game, which really didn't have much last year. So that we could look at maybe a player like that. Okay.
Yeah. I think there's a couple guys that have kept coming up for the Vikings. I think Justin Jefferson out of LSU is a name I keep seeing. Denzel Mims, I've seen him go as early as the first round for the Vikings. I don't think he's a first-round caliber guy. I personally don't think the Vikings should use a first-round pick on a receiver, just because this draft is so deep with receiver, and even in the past, it's been proven that you can find starter, Pro Bowl, All-Pro caliber receivers in the second or third round, and the Vikings have 3 picks in the second and third round, so I think that might be a better option for them to target a receiver rather than the first round, when they have other needs as well besides receiver.
And we'll get into that. And it is interesting because they have what is this? This is, I think, the third or fourth time that Spielman's had multiple first round picks, and it's interesting that how do the fans, what do they think about Spielman? Because here's a guy, if you take a look at his resume, he doesn't really hit big time first round picks. It seems to be his strength is finding guys outside the first round, guys in the middle, late rounds. That seems to be where he does his best.
Yeah, I can agree with that. He's had, not the best of luck in the first round. There's Trey Waynes, Laquan Treadwell, neither with the team anymore. Teddy Bridgewater's not with the team anymore. Xavier Rhodes was just let go. Although I believe you could say Xavier Rhodes was a pretty good success. He was with the team for like 7 years, so that proved to be a pretty good pick. But there's Cordell Patterson, Sharif Floyd. So yeah, the first round is not his strength when it comes to the draft. I would agree that the mid rounds and even some of the later rounds would be more of his strength, because the Vikings got Dalvin Cook in the second round. They got Brian O'Neill in the second round. Eric Kendricks in the second round.
Diggs was in the
Yeah.
fifth.
Diggs was in the fifth. Afedi Odenigbo was a 7th round pick.
Hunter was in the third.
So he's
and Thielen wasn't even a draft pick.
Right. So they've had some very, I wouldn't even know if I would call it luck, but he's just good at finding those guys in the middle that some people don't view as worth giving those guys a shot, and he sees the potential in these guys, and a lot of times it's worked out. So yeah, I wouldn't say the first round is his strength. Maybe that's one thing that's hindered his tenure with the Vikings, but he's definitely hit on some later round guys, that's for sure.
And that really does matter the most, because that's where you build up your roster more than those first round picks. You got to hit those first round picks every once in a while, obviously, if you want to, because you have to have big time talent on your teams. But in order to build depth, if you've got a GM who really knows how to do that, and he does, it's no surprise he's there for as long as he has been. And there are changes though this year to the staff. You've got both coordinators gone. So Kubiak takes over. He was there last year, so that's good. And then you've got the interesting co-defensive coordinator position, even though Mike Zimmer is still the man running things, but his son will be a co-defensive coordinator. So nepotism's one thing, talent is another. How good is Adam Zimmer, his son?
I think the jury's still out, but from everything that everyone's heard, he's a good coach, and the players that he coaches respect him. He's been the linebackers coach with the Vikings for a while, so he's been key in the development of guys like Eric Kendricks and Anthony Barr. And then in the past, he's worked for the Saints and the Bengals, so he's been in the league for a while, so he has experience. But I think the Vikings, when Mike Zimmer was looking for somebody new to take over his defense after George Edwards wasn't brought back, it was just someone to keep his defense in order and just be able to agree with the defense that they've been known to run in the past couple of years. Zimmer doesn't want somebody to come in and try and change things, although they did bring in Dom Capers as a senior defensive advisor. And Zimmer said he brought him in to get some new ideas. He's a 3-4 guy, and the Vikings run a 4-3, so he's looking to maybe throw some different wrinkles into his defense next year. But yeah, the hiring of the co-defensive coordinators are two guys that have been with the team for a while, and they know what Zimmer wants, and they know what he wants out of his defense. So I think those were more just to say that they have defensive coordinators more than these guys are going to have a big influence on what defense does, because that's Mike Zimmer's baby, and he's the guy who he has the final say on everything. He's the play caller, so he's going to be running the defense for however long he's a coach.
If you had to guess, do you think Stefanski will do a good job of Cleveland?
That's tough. I think he's a good coach.
This doesn't seem like a glowing endorsement.
Well, it's an endorsement. I'll give an endorsement to him, but putting anyone with the Browns is just that's a whole nother factor. You have to, because the owner influence and just the way the franchise has been for the past 2 decades of just lack of success. I think he can turn things around.
Okay.
But I think the fan base and the owners there have to have patience
Yeah.
because I think he's got a plan, and it's going to take time. And the Browns haven't really been a team with a whole lot of
Yeah.
patience in recent years.
Well, he's got his
They've
Ivy
just
League buddies now. So
yeah.
the
So
analytic thing going on. So I think,
yeah,
yeah,
he's brought in a lot of help. I think he knows what he's doing. He's worked with a lot of different people. He's worked with Brad Childress, Mike Zimmer, Norv Turner, Pat Shermer. So he's worked with a lot of experienced and successful coaches. So I think if he's of the coaches that they've had over the last couple, he's definitely a much better option than Freddie Kitchens
oh yeah,
or Hugh Jackson. I don't think that's too hard to do. But yeah, I think if the Browns are 8-8 next season, I think that's a success.
All right. Well, they might be expecting more than that, but then again, I guess it
Yeah,
depends on as long as they look like a real football team that does all the little things properly and there isn't any weekly circus material going on, then I think you're right. I think they'll accept that more than anything, even though they won't be a playoff team. But I guess his main job is going to be to get Baker Mayfield right. And if he can get Baker Mayfield right, I think everything else should take care of itself. So
for sure. He's coming from the Vikings offense and the Kubiak offense. I think he liked a lot of things that system does, and I'm sure he'll implement a lot of those things such as play action and building around the running game to take less pressure off of Mayfield's shoulders and not maybe have him force as many throws that he did last year. So I think Stefanski's gonna do his best to put Baker in a position to succeed and not put the entire offense on his shoulders.
all right, sticking on offense, a couple quick things. Josh Klein, the right guard starter last year, remains unsigned. Will he remain unsigned? Are they looking at Sarnia, the 4th-round draft pick from last year, as the guy that they're hoping will be the 2020 starter? And will they look to add in some competition for that spot as well?
Are you talking about Drew Samia?
Yes. There you go.
Yeah. I think he's a contender to be the starting right guard or even left guard next year for the Vikings. They liked what they saw, I think, out of him last year, just progressing and learning on the sidelines. As for Josh Klein, that release was a bit surprising, but he's also been let go by the Patriots and Tennessee Titans within the past couple of years. So you kind of have to wonder, like, if it's something going on with him that people don't really know about, as far as because injuries or something else, because he did suffer a couple concussions last year, and maybe the Vikings are not feeling too good about that, or maybe they just didn't think he was a good fit in their zone blocking offense,
Okay.
and then that can be the case too. It didn't cost them a whole lot to release him. I think they saved around $3 million, so it wasn't a salary cap move, but maybe they just didn't like the direction they were heading with him in there. I think they asked him if he would take a pay cut first, so there is that chance of him potentially coming back at a lower number, and I think he would be a good depth guy to have because he has that experience. But yeah, Samia's a good. I think he's going to be competing for a starting role this year. They'll probably look to add a couple more guys in this year's draft. They need to probably figure out their left tackle situation. Is Riley Reef going to stick around with a $13 million cap
Yeah,
hit
that's true.
this year, or are they going to move him inside the guard? There's been rumors of that. Is Pat Elflein going to stay a starter? Is he going to move to depth? Are they going to get rid of him? So they got a lot of things to figure out with their offensive line, and so I'm curious to see how that plays out during the next few weeks.
And are they comfortable with Mannion as their number 2 for the next couple of years, or would it be a surprise if they added someone else, like a developmental quarterback?
I don't know why, but they really like Sean Mannion.
Okay.
And he's cheap. Apparently, he's like another coach on the sideline.
Okay.
They obviously don't have him for his on-field abilities. because he's never really been able to display anything worthwhile when he's been given the chance to be on the field. Um, but they like him, I guess. I could see them, maybe adding someone in the later rounds with one of their 12 draft
Yeah,
picks.
if they still have 12, yeah.
So that could be an option. They still have Jake Browning. He was undrafted last year, the kid out of Washington. So, and I think they like him too. But signing Kirk Cousins to an extension this offseason, another 2 years. It doesn't look like they're really in the market to use maybe an early round draft pick on a quarterback to let
Not
him
just
sit a
yet.
couple of years.
Yep. Okay.
Let's go to. I think they're all in on.
They're all in on Kirk. All right, and it's good that he got the playoff monkey off his back as well. That'll help out. Okay, on defense, so Everson Griffin remains unsigned. You lose Weatherly, Linval Joseph, but you bring in Pierce from Baltimore. So that was right now, that's the team's biggest offseason addition, bringing him in. And on your website, I noticed you had a recent article regarding Yannick Ngakoue and whether or not, with all the picks that the Vikings have, whether or not that would be the perfect marriage for Jacksonville, because there's no doubt Jacksonville is doing exactly what they did with Ramsey. They've tagged Ngakoue. They tagged him to trade him. He's not going to play with them this year. He's going to go somewhere. So you would think the best place for him to go would be a team that has a ton of draft picks and 2 first-rounders like the Vikings.
Yeah, you would think that would be a good destination. The only problem I think is just the amount of money he wants and the lack of cap space the Vikings have right now, which is around $10 million. But at the same time, if they want to acquire someone like Ngakoue, they can cut Riley Reef and free up $10 million. They can trade Anthony Harris and free up $11 million. So they have some options to clear up cap space and make room for somebody like him. And I think he's a good option. He's 25 years old, and you put him in the spot where Everson Griffin was, and him and Danielle Hunter on the same defensive line, I think is going to cause a lot of problems for opposing offenses. And the Vikings have been known to get the most, I feel like, out of their defensive ends. And Ngakoue has done pretty well during his career already with the Jaguars, and I think the Vikings could get him up to that extra level, reach his full potential. Look at somebody like Jared Allen when he came over to the Vikings and really hit his full potential to become that Hall of Fame caliber type of player. I do think Ngakoue has that type of potential. He just has to fit with the right team. He mentioned he wants to land with a team with a good culture and a consistency of winning, which also fits the Vikings. I think they've been they've displayed that good culture because there's been guys who've come back to the Vikings and taken less money just so they can be with the Vikings. You look at Anthony Barr last year. He could have got more money signing with the Jets, but he was like, no, I like Minnesota a lot, so I'm gonna, even though I'm getting less money, which is still like $14 million a year, I'm gonna, go back to the Vikings because I like what they're doing there and I like being there. So that could be, I think Ngakoue is a good option, and then I also think Everson Griffin could still come back because he's unsigned still, and I think he figured he was going to be one of the first guys, to be off the board. Someone's going to give him a starting job, but I think he's quickly realizing that not a lot of teams want a 32-year-old defensive end who hasn't had a double-digit sack season. He's had one in the past 4 years, so I think he could still come back to the Vikings. He's got a home in Minnesota. He knows everyone likes him there, so I would keep an eye on that. Even though he made that post on Instagram saying goodbye and ending negotiations, I would still keep an eye on Griffin potentially coming back to the Vikings.
He would be a fallback option, though. Okay. Yeah. If they weren't able to put the big deal together for Ngakoue.
Yeah, either that or they don't end up adding anyone they really like in the draft. I could see them, giving Griffin a call. I think a lot of teams are waiting to do that on some free agents to see what they get in the draft because they can't bring guys in for meetings right now or physicals, anything like that. So it's a different kind of approach, I think, to the other part of free agency this year than it has been in years past.
All right, another player that you mentioned before, and this I'm going to go for it. I know this is the most difficult name to probably try to pronounce in the entire league.
Fede Odenigbo.
So is it the way they have it spelled out? It's Ifedi Odenobu.
Yeah, that's not.
Okay, so how is it? How do you pronounce it?
Fede.
Fede. Oh, so that's easy. So
Yeah.
Fede. Okay, yeah, that's like my pitcher on the Nationals is Fede. So that's Fede.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So Odenigbo.
Odenigbo.
Yep.
That's not too bad. That's easy. That's a lot better than what I was seeing online. So Fede Odenigbo. Perfect. Yeah. All right. So tell me about another 7th round gem by Spielman.
Yeah, he really came. He had a great season last year. Filling in. I think he had some. So they put him in pass rushing packages. He's got a lot of versatility. He can play inside the defensive line. He can play on the outside. He started, I believe, mostly as a defensive tackle for the Vikings. When they drafted him, but during the preseason, he showed a lot of ability to rush the passer as a defensive end. So the Vikings kept using him there. They had a really good training camp last year after going around to a bunch of different teams. He was with the Browns and the Cardinals for a tiny bit, but then he came back to the Vikings. So I think he had 7 sacks last year, and he's getting better and better, and he's with that Andre Patterson who is able to coach up these defensive line guys and get just so much out of them. So I think he's a candidate to replace Everson Griffin in his spot in the starting lineup. But again, it depends what they do in the draft. It depends if they want to add someone like Ngakoue. But I think if Odenigbo is the starter for next year with Danielle Hunter in the defensive end spots, I don't mind that at all, because I know the Vikings are capable of getting the most out of their pass rush, and they wouldn't put someone out there if they didn't think he was capable.
All right. In the last 5 minutes, in any defense, you got the yin and the yang with the line, the pressure, and then, of course, that secondary. Sometimes if you have a really good pass rush, the secondary could be okay, and they won't get so exposed, and then vice versa. So you take a look at the secondary now. I don't think there's a team in the NFL that has lost their top 3 corners in the offseason from last year and have yet to even replace any of them yet. So 3 guys down, Waynes, Rhodes, and Mackenzie Alexander played in the slot, and the only body remaining at corner that anybody has identified with, of course, is Hughes, the first-round pick from a couple years ago. So there's a lot of work to be done at corner. And then there's 2 guys that are gone from the bench at safety, who also need to be replaced in Kirsten Sendeo. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done in the secondary.
Yeah, I think they're going to do a lot of that in the draft. Mike Zimmer loves his corners, and I think he'll be for pounding the table for somebody in the first round, I'm sure. But yeah, right now they have Mike Hughes, Holton Hill, and Chris Boyd are looking like they're top 3 corners. And then, they have no depth behind Anthony Harris and Harrison Smith in the safety spots. So they've got to add some people. I've heard they've been, in contact with Dre Kirkpatrick, former Bengals cornerback, who I think Mike Zimmer had a hand in drafting, and I think he worked with him for a little bit.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Before he left for the Vikings. Sure. So even just bringing him in as a veteran to even just bring him in for camp, see if he's a potential fit would be good. But I think a lot of people are going to be surprised if the Vikings roll with the current guys they have. I think they like Chris Boyd a lot. Mike Zimmer likes Chris Boyd a lot. He did really well on special teams last year. They like Holton Hill a lot. He went undrafted for some off-the-field reasons, and some even regarded him as a first-round talent. So I think he has the opportunity to, establish himself as a solid corner in the league next year. And then Mike Zimmer, he's known for, doing well with cornerbacks. That's supposed to be his specialty, the secondary. So he's got his work cut out for him this year. He brought in a different defensive backs coach. I don't think Zimmer liked the direction the secondary was going last year. So he got a new secondary coach and got rid of Xavier Rhodes, Trey Waynes, and Mackenzie Alexander. I think Mackenzie Alexander not coming back might be the biggest blow because it's just so hard to replace someone who's decent in the slot. Um, but yeah, I'm curious to see how this all plays out with the Vikings secondary because it's gonna be interesting and this is supposed to be Mike Zimmer's strength.
Yep.
So let's see what he
Well,
can do.
that's the deal right there. Is if you had a situation like this where you lose the personnel that you've lost, and you are trying to figure out a way to improve upon that, the unit from last year to this year, and how are you going to do that? You're a fan wondering, well, we're in big trouble, but Mike Zimmer, if you're looking for a coach out there, I guess probably Bill Belichick might be the only other coach out there that you would think would do as good as a job, if not better than Mike Zimmer, just for that specific role itself, not only defense, but the secondary. And so they got the right coach to get that done.
For sure. Yeah, I think he's worked with Deion Sanders and Pac-Man Jones and all those guys. So I think if you're gonna if you're gonna have anyone rebuild your secondary, I think Zimmer's the guy to go with.
Okay, so last question is: let's say they stick with they are with their 2 picks. I'm sure you've done several mock drafts, and they're asking you every day who the Vikings going to take. So best guess, whether you want to give me a player or a couple of players or a couple of positions, where do the Vikings go if they hold on to those 2 first-round picks?
Yeah, we tried to figure this out the other day on my Vikings podcast, and we came to the conclusion that there's probably a handful of positions that they could go after. It just depends really how the board falls. Mm-hmm. Cornerback's an obvious one. Offensive tackle is another. I feel like kind of obvious one because just of left tackle in particular, and because this draft is supposed to be filled with offensive tackle talent in the first round too, as well, right?
Yeah. Oh, early, definitely.
Yeah. So if there's a guy that they like, they have the ammo to trade up and get a guy they want.
That's true.
Receiver is potential, but like I said, I don't think going after a receiver is the smartest decision in the first round because it's so deep this year, and they have 3 picks in the first or the second and third round. They have 3 picks, so they can use one of those on a receiver if they feel the need to. Safety, I don't like them going after a safety in the first round either, just because of how much Mike Zimmer has emphasized that safety isn't really a position that they worry
Is there a particular player you like around the 20s
for the first round? I like Christian Fulton.
Okay.
From LSU, the cornerback. I like Josh Jones, the offensive tackle out of Houston. I do like Denzel Mims, the receiver out of Baylor, who's actually a Vikings fan. But I don't like him in the first round. But if they did get him in the first round, I wouldn't be terribly sad. There are a couple safeties. There's Xavier McKinney and Grant Delpit that I like, but I don't know if the Vikings would choose one of those guys in the first round. And then if they like one of the top receivers, like if they like Jerry Jeudy or Henry Ruggs, I think they have the ammo to use to trade up and get one of those guys if they really want to. So the Vikings have a lot of ammo, and if anyone's paid attention to how Rick Spielman has done in the draft in the past, he loves to make trades. So keep an eye on them either trading up in the first round or trading back into the first round or trading into the early part of the second round. He's just going to have a lot of trades, and he's going to be on his own this year. They're not in war room or anything, so he's going to get the final call. So I think there could be even more craziness with trades with Spielman or whoever. Who knows? He can get Bill O'Brien on the phone and trade for Sean Watson.
I know, right?
Like seventh round pick or something.
Hey, if you're being a Viking fan, you want him to trade down. Get out of that first round. Let's just keep stockpiling the later picks because that's where he makes his hay, Spielman. So
wasn't it the Seahawks last year who had they started the draft with I don't know, like 4 picks or 5 picks, and they ended the draft
There
with
you
like
go.
9 picks. So.
Well, when you have 12, though, hopefully you won't end up with 18. But
I never know
you
with
don't.
him. I really
so,
don't.
but anyway, big off season after a playoff win last year and the 60th anniversary, right? 2020, 60th anniversary.
2021, I believe, because the first season was 1961.
Okay. Well, I guess if they make the playoffs, then it'll be considered kind of the. But
I guess this would be the 60th season.
Yeah, I think I read that somewhere. So
2009 was, or 2010 was 50th. So
there you go.
That makes sense.
60th anniversary. So maybe that's it.
Hoping for that. Maybe we'll get.
Well,
get
Viking
Super Bowl.
fans, look, there's not. You've been to Super Bowls, you've been to championship games, but you haven't won one yet. So that's going to be a big day for you guys when you finally get it done, and we'll look forward to talking to you plenty of times throughout the off season and the 2020 season. Adam, thanks a lot for talking to us. And you going to have a draft show, by the way, podcast, I'm assuming.
We'll have some preview episodes. Yeah, we'll have some preview episodes. It's the Bleeding Purple podcast. It's available everywhere. Apple Podcasts, Spotify. So go check that out. We just had Dalvin Cook on.
Awesome.
So go check out that interview. We'll have some more players on and some draft analysts for sure. So check that out. And yeah, check out the VikingAge.com. We always got a lot of good stuff on there. It's the #1 Viking site in the world, so why wouldn't you?
I have no idea. That's why I always get the best on this show. So hopefully people get the idea of what we're doing here, and we know what we're talking about, Adam. So Thanks a lot. Appreciate it. We'll talk to you real soon, Adam.
Thank you for having me.